Gary Stevenson would say, you've had this massive divergence in incomes. The wealthiest of the wealthy now have so much money, they have a lower marginal propensity to spend.
Mm-hmm.
What do they do with it? They buy assets which will generate returns for them. Is that what's driving this?
Well, this is a theory. It is actually interesting that you mentioned that, because this is the issue which was raised even during the Great Recession. It's kind of simple, but it may be true. It's essentially, you have high inequality. That means that there are quite a few people who are wealthy and they have excess savings simply because the marginal propensity to consume is low. You don't know what to do with that. So they are in search of alternative ways to invest that money. And that was the story, of course, before World War I as well, is essentially you search for that. There was a paper, and there were like some studies by two guys, I think Sufi and Amin, arguing that the subprime crisis was the result of that. Essentially, you had to offer to them something. You didn't know what to offer. So either you invest in China or elsewhere, or you invest in something which turned out to be extremely risky, and that was camouflaged by it not being risky. But it is important there to realize that, and I think people did realize, not maybe immediately after the crisis, is that inequality was generating what became the bubble. And it was doing that because simply the people on the top had surplus money and they have to do something with that money.
But that is a really, if you try and explain that to people in this country, if you make the argument, for instance, for a wealth tax, not just to fund better public services or to reduce the deficit, but to change this pattern. I mean, that's actually what Gary says. It's not just to fund the state, but we need to stop this recursive feedback loop of the ultra-rich buying more assets, exacerbating rentierism, and going over and over and over again. Do you think the political class, the Western political class, understand the nature of that feedback loop? Or
I think they understand, but they probably don't want to do that because, I don't know, they may be afraid that actually these high wealth people would leave the country, or they would invest money elsewhere, that the money would not stay. I don't know. But I think the logic seems to me rather clear, and it is an old logic.